All right, I want to welcome everyone to the second episode of the Kingdom Politics podcast. And Pastor Will and Dr. Michael Huffman again. We're going to cover the abortion amendment this time in Virginia. And this one's going up for vote in November. And so, real quick aside, one of the reasons why we're doing this is because both of us preach on Sunday. We're both pastors. And there's an odd prevailing theology out there that we're not supposed to talk about this.
Yeah.
But we are.
Yeah.
Especially this one.
Yes.
And so we're going to go through the whole thing. We're going to start with some stats, but this is the one that really kind of woke me up as a pastor to start speaking out.
Yeah.
And so this one, we'll probably do multiple episodes on this one. This one's a rough amendment, and we'll take you through it. But a couple stats, because people think that this is somehow created to protect freedoms, but these are Planned Parenthood stats from 2024. They're always a year behind on stats. I don't know why that is. And these are for Virginia. So in Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia had the biggest spike of any state in the entire country for the number of abortions performed. We lead the country in that. Not in total abortions, but the increase. We also have the largest increase of out-of-state people coming to Virginia. It jumps 10% year over year. And I want to do one other stat, because when you go to Planned Parenthood, you're supposed to have options. And so I want to dispel that myth pretty quickly, and it's pretty easy. And again, this is their own stats. So for every 187 abortions they performed, and this is for Virginia, they only had one adoption referral.
Wow.
That's it, one. And that doesn't mean the child was adopted. It means that they referred them.
Brought it up.
Yeah, they brought it up. And so what a referral means, that's just how they list it. I don't even know exactly what that means.
That could be a broad definition of a referral.
Yeah. So 187 to 1.
Wow.
Is the ratio.
Wow.
So
it's not good.
It's not as pro-choice as people believe.
Yeah. Well, you listen to whenever these issues come up in the General Assembly, Planned Parenthood is always there fighting with organizations like mine, and you can tell by their verbiage and their presence. You know what side they're coming. They're not on the side of adoption, because everybody, if that's what they really wanted to push, then you would hear that in their speeches, but you don't hear that in their speeches.
No, and it bears out in the stats, because they have to release these why they're behind, I don't know. I'm sure there's. One more stat: 1,102 abortions a day, every single day. And so the thought that this is somehow a freedom that's under attack it's just wrong.
No. And I'm sure those numbers have probably got, you're saying they're from 2024. I'm sure that a lot of those numbers are reflective of the Dobbs decision that was made back in 22, when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Almost, I don't know if you remember or not, Will, but I remember tracking it, and almost within 48 hours, half the states in the country, 24 states out of 50, came out and either made abortion illegal or highly restricted it.
Yeah. This is where Christians made a massive misstep, I think, is the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because in some states they did well, particularly Virginia, but other states, well, depending on this amendment gets passed, we all celebrated that, and rightfully so. I don't want to take away from it. Churches in particular, though, we're not ready to do anything more than that.
Yeah.
Just to celebrate a W and be done with it. But unfortunately, this is the outcome for where we live.
Yeah. And what you hear, the Democrats say all the time. Jennifer Boysko, who's a senator on the for the reproductive freedom, the abortion amendment in the Senate, she always likes to bring up the Dobbs decision. I've listened to her present this bill 4 times, and she always likes to bring up the Dobbs decision, and that in the Dobbs decision was the first time that the Supreme Court has taken away the fundamental right of a woman to have an abortion. No, the Supreme Court didn't do that at all, because
No.
abortion was still legal in Virginia. The only thing that the Supreme Court did was recognize that the justices in 1973 were wrong in their interpretation of the law on a lot of means, but one means is the 10th Amendment. Roe v. Wade should have never gone the way that it went had they interpreted correctly the 10th Amendment. 10th Amendment, Bill of Rights, of course, sum it up. What the federal government has not spoken on, it goes back to, respectively, to the states,
Exactly.
the people of the states. And so the Supreme Court justice in 1973 should have told the young lady that sued the Attorney General of the state of Texas, listen, not only, we'll get to this in a minute, not only do you not have standing, but we don't have standing as a Supreme Court because of the 10th Amendment. This has to be left up to the state. And that's all the Dobbs decision did.
Yeah, I think that's a massive misunderstanding, or whatever you want to call it, disinformation. I know that was a big talking point during the last presidential election. And it's just, for both sides, is wrong. It had nothing to do with whether abortion was right or wrong. Right. It was a matter of legality, that the federal government shouldn't be involved. That it would reverse back to the states. And I talked to a couple of lawyers over the last couple of years, and from my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, but from my understanding, sooner or later it was going to be overturned. Yeah, because it was the legal basis of it wasn't very good, and so it wasn't even. Yeah, it just reverted back to the states, and that's why you have. Actually, Tina from Students from Life, she was at the church last month for Christ and Culture Night. This is how she put it. She said it went from fighting one thing to fighting 50 places now.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that case, Roe v. Wade in 1973, there's a legal precedent that you learn when you first take law, when you go to law school, and that is standing. That's a legal precedent. You've got to have standing. And what the purpose of that is, I don't disagree with it, because the purpose of it is just it allows you, doesn't jam the courts up with frivolous lawsuits. I mean, you and I go to the circuit court. We want to file a lawsuit against somebody because our opinion is, well, the court's going to say, well, you don't have standing to bring that suit, because standing means there has to be something in which this has hurt you, this has violated you, this has made your world upside down. That gives you standing. The interesting thing about that is that when the woman who brought that case, and of course Roe is her surname, it's not her real name,
right?
She wasn't even pregnant when she sued the Attorney General. In fact, I went back and read the whole brief of the entire case, and her standing was, her argument was, she was married, and she said, in the event, and of course I'm not quoting, this is sum up,
right?
In the event that I become pregnant by my husband, and we decide it's not the right time, I want the freedom to be able to terminate that pregnancy. And the justices of the Supreme Court actually heard that. That woman didn't even have legal standing because the anti-abortion laws in the state of Texas didn't even affect her.
Yeah,
because she wasn't pregnant. You and I try to bring a case to circuit court, and say that we haven't been personally hurt by a ruling. The courts will never get before a judge. The clerks will throw it out. It'll never get to a judge.
Wow.
And this woman wasn't even pregnant, did not have standing. And these Supreme Court justices foolishly heard this case and foolishly judged the way they did.
Yeah, so it had that's a...
Of course, you won't hear that from the left in Richmond or Washington.
No, it's all about that somehow this is under attack.
Yeah.
And because we come at everything with a biblical worldview, this is what I've realized over the last probably year. the left has created for themselves. First, there's no moderate Democrats anymore. No. That's gone, and I think Virginia has proven that quite well in the last month.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist anymore. Maybe at some point, I pray that at some point it happens again, but at least for right now, that doesn't exist anymore. And so what they've created, because everyone's wired to worship, everyone is, whether you believe in God or not, you're still doing it. The problem is you have to substitute something for God.
Yeah.
And the left has done that. They've substituted all kinds of stuff for God. And one of their sacraments is abortion.
Mm-hmm.
That's why not one Democrat, regardless of what they think, will not vote against it.
Well, Will, you were with me you were with me a few weeks ago in the House chamber. And when it came time to pray, how many Democrats did you see holding their hands up?
Yeah.
And, and they'll talk to you about the Bible. In fact, we had Nicole Cole got up today and talked about in her house, the House chamber devotion, Democrat devotions. They read from Esther and how she was talking about Queen Vashti and how her rebellion and how her rebellion against her king husband caused her to rise up and be a strong woman. No, rebellion against her king husband got her kicked off of her throne as queen. Yeah. I don't know what version of the story of Esther Nicole Cole has been reading, but how she tried to play that over into March is Women in History Month. And how I didn't know that till today either. Honestly, I learned something today myself. Not that I'm against it. I learned that today myself. But somehow she took Queen Vashti's rebellion and translated it to strong women of the past. And that's what the left does with the Bible. But you saw them in the chamber praying and lifting up their hands while the pastor up front is giving the opening prayer, and it's just. It almost makes you sickening and tired to listen to Democrats talk about the Bible, talk about God, knowing how they vote.
Yeah, because I've seen it before. I went to they're just shoehorning stuff in because it's like I just saw today, and I should have wrote his name down, but the guy from Texas who won the Democrat primary
against Crockett.
Against Crockett.
Funny last name. I'd have to look it up myself.
He is a pro-abortion pastor. Well, sorry. Let me be fair. He's working to become a pastor. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm fair. He's working to become a pastor, but he went on Joe Rogan, and he's been all over. He's pro-choice. And these are people that are, and he's not the only one. There's plenty of pastors out there that are pro-choice, that are leading churches. And it's all shoehorned. A friend of mine sent me a YouTube video the other week. I don't know if it was this guy or not, but they use the Bible. They do read the Bible, but then they just completely shoehorn in whatever it is. It is not, even the passage that they're reading has nothing to do with what they're talking about at all.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And I don't normally tell people just to straight up leave churches, but God is very clear on life.
Yes.
There is no interpretation, exegesis, whatever you want to call it. In theology, it's exegesis. It's just clear.
Yeah. No ambiguity.
No.
None.
And Jesus came in the womb.
Yeah.
Nobody disagrees with that.
Right.
And so to be pro-choice is to what? To say that would be okay?
Yeah. It's incredible, the inconsistency.
Yeah, it's the I always tell, like, here's the great thing about the Bible. You can get from point A to point B. You don't have to jump. There's no mental gymnastics. Yes, the Bible is difficult. in some places, and we have to talk about it, and you need leadership, and you need the Holy Spirit leading you, all of these good things. But you can get from point A to point B with a solid worldview in place. Everything else, you've got to do some mental gymnastics to get from point A to point B. And half the time it doesn't make sense how you get there. But you get there.
Yeah.
But okay, well, let's cover some of the amendment because we can talk for a long time. So Delegate Scott was here in my office a couple months ago, and he took me through everything that we have on the books now.
Mm-hmm.
And then sent me through this one. This is one of the most radical. I mean, it's an amendment, but I would even in bill, even if this was just a bill, it would be. So as an amendment, though, it is exceptionally radical because once it's part of the Constitution, from my understanding, for all intents and purposes, it stays. It'd be very difficult.
It would be very difficult to override it. I mean, there's a process, the same way they're putting the process in now, but it would be very difficult to. You'd have to have. Of course, you don't need the governor because governors don't touch constitutional rights anyway. But you'd have to have the majority in both chambers, which is impossible. But then you'd have to have some legislators with some backbone to be willing to do it. And Delegate Scott is probably one of the few in Richmond that would.
Yeah,
he's one of probably. Philip is probably one of 7 or 8 in the House of the 32, 34 Republicans that would have the backbone to try to do it. But you're right. It is a difficult process to overturn.
So churches have got to be talking about this. Christians need to go vote. And so what part do you want to start with? Because it's not that long, but when you start breaking it out, we'll probably.
We can start wherever you want to.
Fill the time
you
pretty
can start
quick.
Wherever you want to start, brother.
So I like to go off the Student for Life, and we could probably post this. I've posted it before, but they redlined it and explained it what it all means. So it's very basic language on purpose. So let's look at the. I do want to get down to the part where no one's going to be penalized for helping, because that one drives me nuts. But any individual's right to reproductive freedom, and this is right off the amendment, shall not be directly or indirectly denied, burdened, or infringed upon unless justified by a compelling state. And so now all of the safety standards, what constitutes burdened or infringed upon?
Yeah. Well, the language of that adds a layer of fear, if you will, because what about if you got a Christian OB and one of his patients wants an abortion and he says no, he's just infringed upon her rights, her constitutional rights. So what are they going to do with him? Is he going to be forced to do the abortion? First of all, he's probably not trained to do an abortion. Are they going to take away his medical license? Will, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Absolutely can see that happening. I talked with a couple of legislators over the off session about presenting legislation, and I'll let you in. I'll give our viewers a little bit of a secret here. Introducing legislation that if you perform an abortion in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you lose your medical license. They almost got something like that passed in Connecticut. I think it was Connecticut several years ago, but because the medical licenses are given by the state, and a doctor takes an oath: first, do no harm. That's the first oath that a doctor takes. And so, but what the left has to do is they have to dehumanize the baby.
Yeah,
it's a fetus.
Of course.
It's a clump of cells. And I guess, and once they dehumanize the baby, then they can do just about anything they want to do.
Yeah, it's a common tactic in anything, right? You'll never hear them say baby.
No.
You'll never hear them say anything other than, like you said, fetus or a clump of cells. You won't hear them say anything else. And
Even though fetus is Latin for little baby.
yeah, it is. It's just a scientific term. And where are the advocates for the unborn?
Right.
And this is where kind of where I like to go with it sometimes is the state, whether it's the Commonwealth of Virginia or whoever, but the state is now dictating the value of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the first ones to go are always the most vulnerable. And you can look in history and see how this turns out.
Mm-hmm.
It never turns out well. The fundamental right to life is fundamental.
Yeah.
It's and it's interesting if you talk to some of the people that work at women's pregnancy centers or anyone that does any kind of help. There's number one, there's options out there, and I'm working. Actually, I have a meeting tomorrow to try to get these options more out there to people, so that we're not just talking about how bad all of this is, but that there's other options out there. But also, when a woman or a couple hears that heartbeat of a baby, there's nothing else like it.
Right.
Sure. It's every child is a gift from God.
How many partial birth abortions would you imagine are probably committed or performed by Planned Parenthood?
I don't want to venture a guess.
Yeah.
It's probably more than I want it to be.
Well, you do know that in the law in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 18.2-71.1 makes partial birth abortion a Class 4 felony.
I did not know that, but we're going to do that.
But we're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and then one other myth to dispel, because I just learned this last month. Virginia already has third trimester abortions. We already do that.
If you can get a note from 3 separate doctors on record that the pregnancy is the mental or physical strain on the woman, then you can have a third trimester abortion. You can have it right now in the law in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You can have an abortion for 26 weeks without anything, just your choice. Well, that's what makes this amendment so silly.
Yeah,
is that we are, Jennifer Boysko was going to say they took away our fundamental right of an abortion. No, they didn't.
No,
because the day she said that, 1,100 abortions were performed that day in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the day after, and the day after. And so, no, they didn't. Stop with the scare tactic. Stop with the smokescreen.
Yeah.
Let's talk reality. No, they didn't. They sent it back to the states. And right now in Virginia, you can have it up to 26 weeks with no note from anybody.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It's a sacrament to them.
Yeah.
It must be protected at all costs.
You go to the average website of a candidate. You go to Jessica Anderson, who beat Amanda Batten down in Williamsburg. I spoke with her at length over the phone before session, and I informed her Jessica Anderson is a very interesting person. I don't know if you've ever met her or not.
I have not.
Like I said, she beat a good girl, good lady, Amanda Batten in Williamsburg. Jessica Anderson got her claim to fame on TikTok, and I have absolutely nothing for TikTok to do, but she got her claim to fame on TikTok by going out into the woods and filming herself using the bathroom in the woods. And that's how she got her claim to fame. So now she's in the House of Delegates in Richmond. She's the representative from the James City district. So I had a lengthy conversation with her before session, and I told her that over 95.9% of abortions that happen in the Commonwealth of Virginia are being used for birth control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, brother, she went postal on me about that. And she says, that is not true. Let me tell you my story. I said, okay. She says, I'm a classic example that isn't true. I said, okay, Jessica, tell me your story. I want to hear it. Because she promoted not only on her website, her campaign website, that she was pro-choice, but she also promoted on her campaign website that she had an abortion. And it was the best decision that she had ever made.
Yeah.
In fact, it helped her become a better mother. What type of convoluted, misguided thinking is that? I said, okay, Jessica, I want to hear your story. She says, I was in college and I was taking oral contraception. She and her boyfriend were sexually active. She said the contraception failed and I got pregnant. She says, I wasn't ready to be a mom yet. She said, so I had an abortion. I said, Jessica, I said, that's textbook abortion being used as birth control. And then she had to get off the phone. She didn't want to go any farther in the conversation.
No, because they'll look at that, and again, that's why I look at it as a sacrament for them, because they will always go to these most extreme cases of I don't know what we're allowed to say without getting kicked off YouTube. Assault, right? We'll say that, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. That's less than 1%.
Yeah.
And so, and this is what I mean, like, we got to find some serious people, because fine, okay, you want to talk about that, then let's talk about the other 98%.
William Everett Koop, who was a Surgeon General in the Reagan administration, made this statement. In 35 years of medical practice, he says, I've never met a woman who got pregnant as a result of a rape. And he says, in 35 years, now I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah.
I know it's happened.
Oh yeah.
But he says, but this was the biggest point he was trying to make. He says, in 35 years of medicine, I've never met a woman that's pregnant that her pregnancy had to be terminated because of her health. And if that was true back in the 80s, how much more true? How much with medical advances? How much more true is it that a woman that you never have to abort a child because of the health of her mother?
Yeah, and it's so then we come in here to the health part. It says that in the professional judgment of a physician, so just one, is medically indicated to protect the life or physical or mental health of a pregnant individual. Side note, it never says woman in here one time.
No. Surprised they didn't say, they've changed the definition of a woman in Richmond. Now a birthing person.
So, and I am not by any means, because sometimes, because this thing fires me up, and I'm not judging women at all.
Oh, no.
Christ heals everything, including this. And Christ is the only one that's healing this.
Yes.
This is about helping and protecting women, because this is no guardrails whatsoever. And I listened to Tina from Students from Life when she was here, and that's the way that the law is in place now, is that there are some guardrails where you do have to stop and think. And those are all gone now. When this gets passed,
yes.
Sorry. When this gets passed, those guardrails or speed bumps or whatever you want to call them are all gone. And so, what's mental health? And that's like 7 episodes by itself. What in the world is going on with that industry? Well, what does that mean? I'm depressed one day. I'm sad one day.
Right. Yeah.
Versus the joy that, and also to dispel them. Like, I'll share with you my biggest regret in life is having a child later in life. I was 31 when my kid was born. It's the only regret I have in life. Christ has covered all my other mistakes and regrets that I used to have. That's my only one, is I wish, because my wife and I, we got out of the military, and I'm not going to lie to you, it was a fun life. Yeah. But it's nothing compared to the joy that young man brings both of us as parents every single day. And that's my only regret. And so when people will say, like, well, I'm not ready to be a parent. No, you're not. No one is.
No. No.
So, I mean, you could be as ready as you think you are, but until that baby is in your hands, you're not. And so this part, the professional judgment of just one. So before you needed 3, and that's for the 3rd trimester, to be clear, but you needed 3 before. This will take you all the way to the end.
Yeah. And that a physician can be the abortion doctor.
I mean, what's he going to say?
Yeah, I wonder how many abortion doctors would say, "No, you don't need an abortion."
No.
I won't go. I won't put in your I won't put in your official medical record that you need to have an abortion because of your mental or physical health. So, I mean, what are the chances of that happening? I mean, break.
Yeah, 0.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, this to say radical is probably an understatement. Commonwealth shall not discriminate in the protection or enforcement of this fundamental right. Shall not penalize, prosecute, or otherwise take adverse action against an individual on which individual's own exercise of this fundamental right. Okay, let's get to the real tough part for me.
Mm-hmm.
The Commonwealth shall not penalize, prosecute, or otherwise take adverse action against any individual for aiding or assisting another individual in exercising such other individuals. It's a lot of individuals, so sorry, everybody, to reproductive freedom.
With such other individuals.
With such other individuals. Voluntary consent.
Yeah. So a woman goes into a doctor's office, gives consent to an abortion, and a midwife can perform the abortion. So how is that adding to safeguard? You're talking about guardrails a few moments ago. How is that adding to medical guardrails to protect women?
So Students for Life pointed this out, but when I first read this, it was the first thought that I had. So if a woman is trafficked, which by the way happens in Virginia, especially on 95, all the time.
Got billboards about it on 95, yes.
That trafficker can take that young woman and have an abortion, and he can cover up what's going on.
Yes.
And that young lady is not going to get the help she needs, and it's going to all continue.
Yes.
And that person, if they are ever caught, cannot be prosecuted for that part of it. Yep. How on earth?
It's unconscionable, Will. It's unconscionable.
How is that feminism? How is that protecting women? How is that women's rights?
Right.
And it gets even worse when you think about it. And this happened in Fairfax, and they are working very hard to cover this up.
Yes.
But I reached out to the reporter. In Fairfax, at a Centerville high school, they took 2 young women, teenagers, to an abortion clinic without their parents' knowledge. That happened. Whether they want to admit it or not, it's a whole other story. I talked to the reporter because I don't live in Centerville, but it doesn't matter. It's in Virginia. But anyway, I talked to the reporter. It's real. It happened. And that's without this.
And the Commonwealth paid for it. Taxpayers probably paid for it.
Oh, taxpayers didn't just pay for that. They're also paying for the lawyers that are investigating the allegations.
Yeah.
6 figures.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a boy, but if he needs medicine at school, they have to call me if he needs a Tylenol or an ibuprofen because he sprained his wrist playing basketball. The school has to call myself or my wife and say, hey, can we give him some ibuprofen?
Yeah, but
if a teenage girl needs an abortion, they don't have to call anybody.
Right. Exactly. Or Uncle Tom or Uncle Bud, whoever he is, gets his niece pregnant.
Yeah.
He too can take his niece to Planned Parenthood to cover up his crime.
Yeah.
And can't be prosecuted.
No.
And mom and dad know nothing about it. That's where the language that at the very beginning, every individual has the fundamental right to reproductive freedom. And that freedom cannot be directly or indirectly denied, burdened, or infringed.
No. And this is the part where I, for the life of me, don't understand why we are not protecting if in the state of Virginia, and I'm not saying you should smoke, but you have to be 21 to buy a pack of cigarettes. Yeah. I don't know the age for a tattoo anymore, but it was 18. I'm assuming it's still 18. Beer is 21. Mm-hmm. You can make to vote is 18. Mm-hmm. So we have said in order to be part of the civic process, you have got to be 18. Assuming you're an adult at 18, some of us aren't, but that's besides the point. But to have a medical abortion performed,
yeah,
let her rip.
14, no problem. Have you ever heard of Eileen Roberts?
Yes.
Did we mention her last week?
Yeah, I think we mentioned her last week.
And have the horrific, and I'm not saying, like I said, she's told her story all over the country, so I'm not saying, we wouldn't be saying anything that she hadn't already said publicly. But her family was the victim of a young girl, her daughter, getting an abortion, and she found out by accident.
Yeah.
And it's unconscionable.
It's crazy. And this is the part where I think a lot of people, maybe not about this specifically, because I think this is a very, you're one side or the other issue, but, and I know that there's people in Richmond trying. So when I say this, I don't want to pretend like I don't know that people aren't trying, but good gracious, where, and I don't, Democrats, Republicans, this is where and I'm just biblical. Mm-hmm. Where are the people to stand up for this? This is what's going to happen, and people will say like, "Oh, that's scare tactics that trafficker would take a young lady to an abortion." It's not scare tactics.
No,
it's already happening.
It's happening. Yes,
it's already happening right now.
Yeah, we know of what we know of what we speak. We know of what we speak. Yeah, it's already happening.
Yeah, this isn't a scare tactic. And the primary function of any government is to protect the people.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. Everything after that is whatever. It's bureaucracy.
Yeah. In 2025, in the General Assembly, 2025, when this bill was before the Privilege and Elections Committee on the House side, for the first hearing, Delegate Philip Scott is on that committee.
Yeah,
and he brought up an amendment, and his amendment was that he wanted to add an amendment here that would protect children born alive. Well, he not so much as got the words out of his mouth that a Democratic colleague on the other side was yelling out PDI, 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 pass by indefinitely. And that delegate is a pastor. And he doesn't even want born alive legislation inside this amendment. Now, that's not only ungodly, that's barbaric. In fact, I said in P&E committee this year that this amendment is barbaric.
It is. There is no safety rails. No. This is full on. There's European countries don't even do this.
This would make Virginia the most radical in the world on abortion policies.
Europe, it's been a while since I checked the stats. Currently, at least as of like last year, is like less than 5% Christian. So we're talking about now the Muslim population is high, but let's just say secular in general. We're talking about a 95% secular society that has basically removed Christianity from their culture. Doesn't do this,
right?
But Christians and I follow, you follow, we follow God. For a pastor to say that a baby born alive, that's not to pass over, or however you put it, that's not a pastor. Mm-mm. You can take whatever title you want. That's up to you.
Yeah.
But we have, as Christians, like I said, the moderate left is gone. And Christians have got to start waking up and going, that's not the God I follow.
Right.
That's not the Bible I read. Christ loved everybody. Absolutely, he did. He died for all of us. But you know what? When it came to the Pharisees, he let them have it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Christians, God's people, this isn't a political issue, Will.
Not at all.
It's biblical. And Christians need to stop with the, well, I don't get involved in politics lie.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, if you don't get involved in politics, you don't get involved, nobody's asking you to run for office. But I will tell you this, if you stay at home as a Christian and don't vote no for this, and this becomes the constitutional law of the Commonwealth of Virginia, when you stand before God one day, he's going to ask you why. Why did you not stand up for it? Because it's real easy, Will, to stand up when everybody else is. But when everybody else is bowing to Nebuchadnezzar, when everybody else is bowing to Baal or Nebuchadnezzar's statue, it's real hard then to stand. But that's what God calls us to do. He doesn't call us to win. He calls us to stand. I've lost a lot of battles in the General Assembly this session, as I suspected I would.
Yeah.
But God didn't. Thankfully, God doesn't hold me responsible for the result. He holds me responsible for standing the truth. This is the truth. I'm not going to move from it. So when I come to the podium and I open my mouth, I've had Democrat chairmen. In fact, I was arguing one bill. I believe it was a contraception bill, and VAIB doesn't take a position on contraception in general. Right. We say that that's a decision between the husband and wife and God, husband and wife and God.
Yeah,
not a couple and God, a husband and wife and God. But we do take a position against abortifacient,
right?
Contraception. And when I got up to speak, Senator Lamont Bagby was the chairman of this committee, and he asked me, he said, Michael, before you speak, have you read the substitute? And I said, Senator, it just hit my laptop 5 seconds ago. I skimmed it right before I came up here. And then he turned to his colleague and he said, well, it's not going to change that guy's opinion anyway. So they know where VAI stands, and we stand for truth. And Christians have got to do that.
Yeah, I've had enough of this. Like, what kind of Christian are you?
Yeah.
I remember I just preach the Bible. Yeah. That's it. It's not rocket science. And so I did this from the pulpit as part of my sermon on Sunday at a 2 Chronicles chapter 20, and I'll just paraphrase all of it. But King Jehoshaphat, so Judah and Jerusalem, they're surrounded by 3 armies. This is the God we follow, and this is what Christians have got to start getting some boldness. Because Jehoshaphat goes to God and he goes, God, basically, I'm not sure what to do. We're in trouble. And God tells him through a prophet, you go out there and stand in front of them, but you will not have to fight. But you do have to go stand. And so Jehoshaphat goes out there and he brings his entire army, what's comparatively speaking, quite small against 3. But he does something interesting. He takes men who can sing and he puts them at the front, and they sing the praises of God at the front, in front of all 3 armies, and they did not have to fight that fight. God won. He took care of the fight for them. And the boldness think about the boldness to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Christians will hide in the churches. I don't understand it.
Right.
Especially about something like this.
Yeah.
To where a teenage girl who's in trouble, who needs help, is going to have to go through something. And that's the other thing the left will never talk about. I'm sorry, but I have spoken with a lot of people that have had these procedures done, and it is not as clean and simple as people think.
Correct.
There is a price to pay, unfortunately. And Christ is the only thing that I have seen heal that. And I've seen people use plenty of other options.
Absolutely.
But they will never talk about that.
No. Well, you look at the first sentence of this amendment, it says that every individual has the fundamental right to reproductive freedom, including, and then it makes a list of things, including the ability to make and carry out decisions relating to one's own personal prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraception, abortion care, miscarriage management, and fertility care. Okay. Let's break that down. Every individual has the fundamental right to reproductive freedom, including these things.
Right.
Not limited to these things, but including these things. So, can I use your son as an example?
Sure.
How old is your son?
He's 11.
He's 11. Okay, let's make your son 18 or 17. Okay, let's make him still a minor. He decides he wants transition surgery. He wants transition therapy. He decides that God made a mistake when he made him a boy and he's supposed to be a girl. Guess what? Every individual has a right to reproductive freedom.
Yeah.
This will all, not only does the marriage amendment that we'll talk about some other time down the road allow for that, but that sentence right there, every individual has the right to reproductive freedom, including these things, but not limited to these things. But reproductive freedom is whether I'm a male or female.
Yeah.
And so the very first sentence of this opens the door, not only for non-parental notification and abortions, the non-parental notification and gender transitioning. And I was talking some months ago, I was talking to Jim Bopp. He's a lead counsel for the national organization Right to Life in Indiana. And he asked me to send him a copy of this resolution. And his first words to me, we had a Zoom call. His first words to me, he says, the poor women of the Commonwealth of Virginia. He says, Michael, I want you to look at that first paragraph. And he says, they have the right, including these rights. He says, postpartum care. Okay, how far can they take that? Now, I have 5 boys. And my wife was very blessed that she never had one moment of postpartum depression. But I've dealt with women. I mean, I've answered the phone in my office before. We had a young lady a young mother, a young wife who had a child, and it was her second or third child. And I picked up the phone because I was closest to it, and she was screaming on the other end of the phone because her postpartum depression. I gave it to her and said, you deal with that. You know more about that than me. But what if that young lady had gone to her doctor and said, you know what, I am so depressed, I don't want to live anymore?
Yeah.
Would assisted suicide be part of her postpartum care? And God just defeated 2 assisted suicide bills in Richmond this session. Medical assisted suicide is on their radar. They've done it. They did it in 24.
Yeah.
They didn't do it in 25, but they did it this session. Praise God, God defeated it. Even some Democrats voted against it. Schuyler Van Valkenburg, senator, voted against it. So it got defeated by God's grace, but they'll try again. So it's already on the radar.
Oh yeah.
Medical assistance. So it's not far-fetched to say that they can push postpartum care out that far. And I told a friend of mine about that, and he says, I think you and Jim are a little bit out there. And then 2 weeks later, he sent me an article and says, I don't think you and Jim are so far out there. He had the state of Kansas. He sent me an article. The state of Kansas has a law that all medical directives are null and void if you're pregnant, because they want to protect the life of that child in the state of Kansas. This woman, I can't remember her name. It was a group of, it was 3 or 4 women, sued to overturn that, to where if a woman is hooked to a machine and her medical directive is unplug the machine, the state of Kansas law says, well, if you're pregnant, it's against law to do that.
Right.
She wanted to overturn that law. So he says, it's not so far-fetched.
No.
That a woman who's depressed would say, you know what, I don't want to live anymore. And I know a missionary, I'm not going to say his name, but I know a missionary who had a number of children. And the youngest child, wife, suffered from postpartum depression. And that she put her new baby in the car and drove out to a major highway in the state that they lived, parked the car on the shoulder, got the child out of the car, was walking down the road, and she stepped out in front of a semi-truck with the baby in it. Now, the force of the semi-truck threw the baby off into the ditch. The baby survived by God's grace.
Wow.
I mean, I think every bone in his little body was broken.
Yeah.
But the baby survived and is alive to this day. Of course, the mother was instantly killed.
Right.
But don't tell me that women aren't to the point where they want to, even Christian women. This is a Christian woman. And it can inflict their lives. And this language can very easily push that door open.
Yeah. And this is where, as men, as Christian men, we have to step up and protect people, because that's our job.
Yes.
It's what it is. It's innate to everyone, or every man. And who's protecting Who here?
Right.
No one's protected.
No.
The quote unquote freedom that they so desperately desire is already there. And it takes away everything, and there's no protections now for particularly vulnerable women.
Yeah.
But any woman in general, there is no more guardrails. There is no more anything. There is no more. And where are the, again, Christian men standing up? I see on Instagram, again, Students for Life is a great resource. There's plenty of women who will stand up and do it, but men will a lot of times go, well, that's not really my.
Right.
No, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's absolutely your issue.
Absolutely.
It's all of our issue.
Absolutely.
It's the sanctity of life.
Mhm.
Who gets to decide that?
I had Sia Price, who's the chairman of the P&E committee on the House side. Not a very nice lady. I had her look at me, and not this session, but last, and I was telling her about the heartbeat is alive, is detectable in the baby's an unborn child's body at 3 weeks.
Yeah.
After conception, brain activity at 8 weeks. So, the skeletal, the vascular system being developed at 12 weeks. She looked at me. She says, "Michael, I know all that. We just don't care. We want women to have the right to choose." Okay, so you're admitting that you're killing a human.
Yeah.
That's got brain activity, a heartbeat, all these things. But let me just give our viewers something to think about, if I may. Based on the things we've said tonight so far, I've changed over the years. In fact, over the last several months, I've changed the way I approach pro-choice people.
Yeah.
Because there are people. There are people for whom Christ died. And they can be redeemed. They can be forgiven. But I've changed the way that I approach them. And based upon the things that you and I have discussed, drawn out of this amendment tonight, I never go up to someone that's pro-choice and say abortion is murder. Now, you and I know that it is, but I never use that phrase because that phrase has become cliche.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what they expect. What I want to do is take the language of the amendment, flip it on its head, and throw it in the face of the person I'm talking to. Not harsh, but lovingly throw in the face of the person I'm talking to what the amendment says. So this is what this lady that I wrote an article about, a lady that this is what I did with her. I said, "Do you believe that it is okay for a 15-year-old girl to be taken by a guidance counselor to Planned Parenthood to have an abortion without her mom and dad's notification?" She said, "Absolutely not." I said, "Then you need to vote no on this amendment."
Yeah.
I said, "Do you believe that it's okay for a sex trafficker to take one of his victims to Planned Parenthood and force her to have an abortion to cover up his crime? Do you believe that's okay?" "That's crazy, Michael. Absolutely not." I said, "Then you need to vote no on this amendment." I said, "Do you think that it's okay for a midwife who's not medically trained to perform an abortion?" She says, "That's nuts." "No." So then you need to vote no on this amendment. I said, "Do you believe that it's okay to have an abortion in the third trimester?" She said, "You cannot have an abortion in the third trimester." I said, called her by name. I said, "You can have an abortion in the third trimester in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now." "No." And I had to show her from code where you could.
Yeah.
And I said, "But this amendment will make it where you only have to have the opinion of one doctor. So do you believe that's okay?" "No." I said, "Then you need to vote no on this amendment." You see, I've stopped arguing with them about the fact that it's murder. They know it's a murder. They know it's a life. I mean, they're not they're evil, but they're not ignorant.
Yeah.
They know that it's a life. So now what I recommend to people do, and for our viewers that are watching, is take the language of the resolution, just like I just did, and ask questions. Do you believe this is okay? I've not met a pro-choice person yet, Will, that's good with what this amendment says.
Yeah.
The problem is they don't know what it says.
No.
In fact, this girl looked at me and says, "Well, our leader of our organization is trying hard to get it changed." I said, "She's too late."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I said, "The ballot's already being written up. It's going on the ballot in November." I said, "You can't change it. The only recourse you have now is to vote no." And she's of course wearing her purple, protect reproductive freedom in Virginia shirt. And but I really got her thinking. She says, I was raped when I was 16, maybe 15. And she says, I was really mad at my mom, and tears started welling up in her eyes. And she says, I was really mad at my mom because she wouldn't let me get an abortion. And she says, I had a boy. And I said, well, my heart goes out to you for that. I said, I said, where's that boy now? Oh, she says, he's my son. He lives with me. He's changed my life. And I said, I bet you can't imagine life without him. She says, I was mad at my mom at the time, tears running down her face. She says, but no, I can't imagine life without him.
No.
And I said, well, this amendment will make that so much easier for a girl in your position to get an abortion and not have her life changed for the good, and mom and dad never even know about it. So ask those questions. Don't make statements, because they're expecting you to make statements. Ask the questions based on what the resolution says.
Yeah, and I know we got to close. Again, we're supposed to model our lives off of Christ. And when you really dig into the Gospels, I used to know it right off the top of my head. It's something like 300 some odd questions he asks throughout the Gospels. He only if you actually go and read the Gospels, he actually only really answers about 7 questions. Everything that he does, he asks questions because it's all worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were saying earlier, the Bible gives you that ability to have a worldview. And when you ask people questions, they have to work through their own worldview to make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But when it doesn't make sense, that's when I used to have a evangelism professor tell me years ago, you're just putting pebbles in people's shoes.
Yeah.
Because they got to stop and do something with the pebble.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we're trying to do. And people just need to, that's great. Just to ask questions, because what I've found over the last year or so since this has been on my radar is most pro-choice people are actually probably pro-life.
Yeah.
They just don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the light of this.
Yeah.
Now we'll talk about it next time, I'm sure, but just to bring up the Born Alive issue, because we'll talk about some Born Alive legislation that the Democrats killed this session. But if you look at surveys, the Rasmussen survey and several other surveys, 75 to 82%, not of Americans but 75 to 82% of pro-choice people in America, not just Americans, pro-life and pro-choice, but 75 to 82% of just pro-choice people are in favor of Born Alive legislation.
Yeah, well, so this will be the first, and we'll do another episode about this, but it's up and vote in November, and you can easily find the amendment. Please read it. Please do some research. Listen to what we have to say or other people have to say, and make an informed decision on what is happening, because the road that we're on is rough.
Yes.
And we're trying to shine some light on that road. And my son reminded me we're supposed to say to subscribe and share, please. It helps us. But thank everyone for watching or listening, however you consumed it. Last time the numbers were, I know we got to close because I got to go to a Bible study, but I always pray, anytime I start something new, I pray to God that just one person.
Yeah.
Because that's all, because I don't want to talk to myself.
Yeah.
And there was more than one.
Yeah. Amen.
So as always, appreciate your time.
Absolutely glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
And we'll have another one next week. And thank you, everybody.